In this fourth module, we will discuss the Buddhist teachings on proper speech. Proper speech is very important to harmony. Words can generate anger or friendship, can win or harden hearts, can deceive others or open them to new understanding. The transformation of people and societies has been facilitated by speech, sometimes spoken, sometimes written. With the rise of mass media and social media, proper speech becomes even more important. At the time of the Buddha, communities did not have to deal with mass media or social media. However, the same principles of proper speech can be applied. When many voices shout at once, none considers himself a fool. Though the community is being split, none thinks himself to be at fault. The Buddha said that there were two conditions for the arising of right understanding, which is the starting point of morality and the starting point for spiritual development. The two conditions are the voice of another and wise attention. At the time of the Buddha, there were no books and no internet, so listening to Dhamma talks was the only way to be exposed to the Dhamma. In this module, when we talk about proper speech, this also includes the written word and what we put online. As I mentioned in the module on personal training, wise attention means looking at things through the lens of the Buddha's teachings, not being deluded and not seeing things in a wrong way. The Noble Eightfold Path has 3 sections. The wisdom section of the Noble Eightfold Path includes right understanding and right thought. In the first module, we discussed right understanding. The virtue section of the Noble Eightfold Path includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right speech is the first factor in the virtue section of the Noble Eightfold Path. The meditation section of the Noble Eightfold Path includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The Buddha defined right speech as abstaining from 4 things. The first is to abstain from lying. Now, this was the Buddha's advice to his 7-year-old son. If a person feels no shame in telling a deliberate lie, there is no evil he will not do. Thus, Rahula, you should train yourself. I will not tell a deliberate lie, even in jest. A Scottish poet once wrote, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." One small white lie leads to a second lie, and that leads to another lie, and before you know it, we have a habit of lying. Following the instructions of the Buddha, Angulimala said to a woman in labor, "Sister, since I was born in the noble birth, I do not recall intentionally killing a living being. Through this truth, may there be well-being for you, well-being for your fetus." And there was well-being for the woman, well-being for her fetus. Though Angulimala had killed many people before becoming a monk, once Angulimala became a monk and was born in the noble birth, he abstained from any form of killing. Even today, monks and nuns utter this phrase as a parita, or protective blessing, when a woman is in labor. Notice the phrase, "Through this truth may there be well-being." According to Buddhism, the sincere utterance of a truth has almost magical powers. Whatever wealth, here or beyond, whatever exquisite treasure in the heavens, does not for us equal the Buddha. This too is an exquisite treasure in the Buddha. By this truth may there be well-being. Now this is another example from the Ratana Sutta of using a declaration of truth to invoke a blessing. So in summary, telling the truth and abstaining from lying is extremely important in Buddhism. The second aspect of right speech is abstaining from slander. Abstaining from slander, he does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here in order to divide those people from these. Thus, he is one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of unity who enjoys harmony, rejoices in harmony, delights in harmony, a speaker of words that promote harmony. Slander destroys harmony. A third aspect of right speech is abstaining from harsh speech. Insults, verbal attacks, and written attacks are examples of harsh speech. Abstaining from harsh speech, he speaks words that are gentle, pleasing to the ear, lovable, words that go to the heart, courteous words that are desired by many people and agreeable to many people. Harsh speech also destroys harmony. The final aspect of right speech is abstaining from idle talk. So here is how the Buddha defined idle talk. Conversations about kings, robbers, ministers of state, armies, alarms, battles, food and drink, clothing, furniture, garlands, scents, relatives, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, the countryside, women and heroes, the gossip of the street and the well, tales of the dead, tales of diversity, the creation of the world and of the sea, talk of whether things exist or not. Now let me give you a quick summary of what all that means. Basically, almost everything that we read in the newspaper, surf online, see on TV, or discuss in the coffee shop. So what did the Buddha define as the opposite of idle talk? talk on modesty, on contentment, on seclusion, on non-entanglement, on arousing persistence, on virtue, concentration, on discernment, on release, and on the knowledge and vision of release. Basically, Dhamma talks. So, wrong speech has 4 aspects: lying, slander, harsh speech, and idle talk. The commentaries list the required conditions which must be present for wrong speech to happen. Let's look at the conditions for lying in a bit more detail. First, there must be an untrue thing. Second, there must be the intention to deceive. Third, there must be an effort to deceive. Now, even remaining silent may be interpreted as an effort to deceive. Finally, the untrue thing is conveyed to the other person. Notice that it doesn't matter if the other person believes you or not. The commentaries also list factors that influence the seriousness of the bad karma produced by lying. Lying to a spiritual person such as a monk is more serious than lying to a non-spiritual person. This is not because monks are more important than lay people. It's because conversations with monks are usually about spiritual things, and lying about spiritual things is more damaging to your spiritual development than lying about worldly matters. Lies that destroy a lot of benefit, such as lies during a court case, are more serious than lies that destroy little benefit. And finally, lies motivated by the intention to hurt another person are more serious than lying to save yourself or lying to save another. Here are the required conditions for other forms of wrong speech. Notice that intention and effort are required in all cases. The stronger the intention and effort, the more serious the bad karma that is created. Okay, so far we have clearly defined wrong speech. The Buddha explained many other aspects of proper speech. These other aspects of proper speech form the structure of this presentation. First is well-spoken speech. Before I start quoting suttas, let me show you an acronym that a friend shared with me. The acronym is WAIT. Here is what it stands for. Why am I talking? This is a reminder that before you open your mouth, you should wait and ask yourself, why am I talking? Often we talk just because of our ego. Sometimes we have a sneaky intention behind our speech. If we are talking because of our ego or because of sneaky intentions, it's better to keep silent. In the module on personal training, I shared with you the Buddha's instructions to his son Rahula, in which the Buddha recommended practicing wise attention before, during, and after each bodily, verbal, and mental action. Now, on to the suttas. When speech possesses 4 factors, it is well spoken. One speaks only what is well spoken, not what is badly spoken. According to the commentary, when the Buddha said, when speech possesses 4 factors, it is well spoken, the term well spoken means speech that brings benefits. However, when the Buddha said one speaks only what is well spoken, in this context, the term well spoken means speech that promotes harmony. This means to avoid slander. One speaks only on the Dhamma, not on non-Dhamma. This means to avoid idle talk. One speaks only what is pleasant, not what is unpleasant. This means to avoid harsh speech. One speaks only what is true, not what is false. This means to avoid lying. So in this sutta, the Buddha is explaining that speech that is beneficial avoids the 4 types of wrong speech: slander, harsh speech, idle talk, and lying. In this next sutta, the Buddha lists 5 factors of a well-spoken statement. The Buddha tailored each sutta to the audience and to the circumstances. This is why in the last sutta, the Buddha listed 4 factors corresponding to the 4 types of wrong speech, and in this sutta, the Buddha lists 5 factors, some of which overlap with the previous sutta. A statement endowed with 5 factors is well spoken. First, if it is spoken at the proper time. If a person is angry or preoccupied with something else, it may not be the right time to speak to them about something important. Also, a public setting may not be the right time to speak about certain topics. Second, if it is spoken truthfully. Truthfulness is always important. Third, if it is spoken gently. As Mary Poppins said, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Fourth, if it is spoken beneficially. In other words, it is helpful to the person or to the situation. And finally, if it is spoken with a mind of loving kindness. If it is spoken with friendliness and non-anger, genuinely wishing for the best for the other person. We talked about the importance of loving kindness or metta in the previous module. One should speak only that word by which one would not torment oneself or harm others. That word is indeed well spoken. One should speak only pleasant words, words that are acceptable to others. What one speaks without bringing evils to others is pleasant. Here, in another context, the Buddha talks about words that are well spoken. But if you only look at this one sutta, you might have the mistaken impression that the Buddha wanted us to avoid unpleasant topics and avoid criticizing others. This is why it's important to look at many suttas to properly understand the Buddha's teachings. Too often, people make incorrect assumptions about the Buddha's teachings by only looking at one sutta and ignoring the big picture. At the time of the Buddha, it was common for people to debate with each other. Parks were set aside for wandering ascetics to discuss their views, and larger towns had a debating hall where ascetics would gather for debates. The Buddha gave guidelines on how to approach questions that would come up during a discussion or a debate. There are some questions that should be answered categorically. For example, the question, "Is the eye impermanent?" should be answered categorically with, "Yes, it is impermanent." Some questions should be answered after making a distinction. For example, the question, "Is the impermanent the eye?" should be answered by making a distinction. Not only the eye, but the ear, the nose, etc. are also impermanent. Some questions should be answered with a counter question. For example, if asked the question, "Does the eye have the same nature as the ear?" one should answer this by asking, "With respect to what?" If they reply with respect to seeing, one should answer, "No." If they reply with respect to impermanence, one should answer, "Yes." And finally, there are some questions that should be set aside. For example, if asked the question, "Is the universe finite or infinite?" this should be set aside without answering it, saying, "This has not been declared by the Buddha." The Buddha said it's not easy to teach the Dhamma to others. Dhamma should be taught to others only when 5 thoughts are established within the person doing the teaching. First, I will speak step by step. The commentary explains that this means starting with generosity or dana, next talking about virtue or sila, and finally about the effects of dana and sila in the next life, rebirth in heaven. Second, I will speak explaining the sequence of cause and effect. The commentary explains that this means explaining the reasons behind each point discussed. Third, I will speak out of compassion. Fourth, I will speak not for the purpose of material reward. And finally, I will speak without hurting myself or others. Now, the commentary explains that if a speaker praises himself, this is hurting themselves, and also that a speaker should not insult others. The Buddha was famous for knowing exactly the right thing to present to a listener to help them with their spiritual development. Other monks lacked this kind of intuition, so the Buddha warned monks about giving wrongly addressed talks. A wrongly addressed talk is like speaking to a wall. A wrongly addressed talk happens when a person speaking misreads the character of the listener. The speaker needs to start from some common ground with the listener and then build on this. If the speaker does not start from some common ground, then the talk is wrongly addressed. A talk is wrongly addressed when a talk on faith is wrongly addressed to one devoid of faith. A talk on virtuous behavior is wrongly addressed to an immoral person. A talk on learning is wrongly addressed to one of little learning. A talk on generosity is wrongly addressed to a miser, or a talk on wisdom is wrongly addressed to an unwise person. A wrongly addressed talk on faith, virtuous behavior, learning, generosity, wisdom will make the listener lose his temper and become irritated, hostile, and stubborn. In other words, the speaker should tailor their talk to the character of the listener. Otherwise, the listener will become irritated and ignore the talk. If the listener ignores the talk, it is like the speaker is talking to a wall. The wrongly addressed person does not perceive that faith, virtuous behavior, learning, generosity, or wisdom in himself and doesn't like hearing about it. For example, as we discussed in an earlier talk, when addressing lay people, the Buddha typically started talking about dana or giving, and then proceeded to discussing sila or virtue. And only when the layperson is firmly established in dana and sila would the Buddha discuss bhavana or mental development. So if a monk is addressing a layperson whose focus is dana, a talk on the details of higher meditative states would be wrongly addressed in this situation. Earlier, the sutta said that a talk on generosity is wrongly addressed to a miser. So if you want to deliver a message about generosity to a miser, one must use skillful means and find a common starting point that can be built upon. This next sutta is delivered at monks who destroy the harmony of the Sangha by creating arguments. When a monk is a maker of arguments, 5 dangers can be expected for him. He does not achieve what he has not yet achieved. He falls away from what he has already achieved. A bad report circulates about him. He dies confused. He is reborn in a bad destination. Now, although this sutta talks about monks and the harmony of the Sangha, I think that similar principles apply to lay people who stir up arguments. Within the Sangha, the Buddha did not insist that all words be sweet. He allowed for both praise and blame. A monk should be criticized if, without investigating and scrutinizing, he praises one who deserves criticism. He criticizes one who deserves praise. He believes a matter that merits suspicion. He is suspicious about a matter that merits belief. Or he squanders what has been given to him out of faith. The sutta continues listing the corresponding 5 ways that a monk should be praised. Sometimes praise is due, and sometimes criticism is due. The next sutta was delivered by the Buddha to an ascetic of another sect. Now, let me start by saying that in all cases, both praise and criticism, the speech must be truthful and timely. So the Buddha said there are 4 kinds of persons. First, one who criticizes someone who deserves criticism, but doesn't praise someone who deserves praise. One who praises someone who deserves praise, but doesn't criticize someone who deserves criticism. Third, one who doesn't criticize someone who deserves criticism and doesn't praise someone who deserves praise. And fourth, one who criticizes someone who deserves criticism and also praises someone who deserves praise. In this sutta, the Buddha asked the ascetic which of these approaches was best, and the ascetic picked the third option, remaining silent on both praise and criticism. The ascetic picked this option because the ascetic felt that equanimity is what is most important. The Buddha disagreed with the ascetic. Of these 4, the most excellent is the one who criticizes someone who deserves criticism and praises someone who deserves praise, because knowledge of the proper time to speak is what is most important. So the Buddha said that it is important to criticize if it is done at the right time. In these next suttas, the Buddha talks about knowing what to say and how to say it. If speech is untrue, incorrect, and unbeneficial, one should never utter it. So if something's untrue, don't ever say it. If speech is true, correct, and unbeneficial, one should try not to utter it. If something is unbeneficial, try not to say it. If speech is true, correct, and beneficial, one may utter it knowing the time to do so. So if something is true and beneficial, say it at the right time. Now, as mentioned earlier, if a person is angry or preoccupied with something else, it may not be the right time to speak to them about something important. Also, a public setting may not be the right place to speak about certain topics. In the case of words that the Buddha knows to be untrue, unbeneficial, disagreeable, or agreeable to others, he does not say them. True, unbeneficial, disagreeable, or agreeable to others, he does not say them. True, beneficial, disagreeable, or agreeable to others, he has the sense of the proper time for saying them. Now, this is another sutta in which the Buddha is basically saying the same things. If something is untrue, don't ever say it. If something is unbeneficial, try not to say it. If something is true and beneficial, say it at the right time. I am an engineer, so I like flowcharts. Here is a summary of these past 2 suttas presented as a flowchart. Before you speak, if it is untrue, stop. If it is not beneficial, try to stop. If it is true, beneficial, and agreeable, you should speak. If it is true, beneficial, and disagreeable, you should wait for the proper time before speaking. Finally, here is what the Buddha said about scolding others. One who wishes to scold another should first consider, I will speak at the proper time, not an improper time. I will speak truthfully, not falsely. I will speak gently, not harshly. I will speak in a beneficial way, not in a harmful way. I will speak with a mind of loving kindness, not while harboring hatred. Now you may recall that these are the 5 factors that make a statement well spoken. This is the preparation for the person doing the scolding. But what about the person being scolded? One who is scolded should be established in 2 things, in truth and non-anger. He should consider, if others should scold me, whether at the proper time or at an improper time, whether about what is true or what is false, whether gently or harshly, whether in a beneficial way or in a harmful way, whether with a mind of loving kindness or while harboring hatred, I should still be established in 2 things, in truth and non-anger. I think that it's important that the person being scolded does not let their ego get in the way of accepting criticism and possibly learning from the experience. Now here is my advice for the person doing the scolding. Before you speak, you should think. Think is an acronym. Ask yourself, are all of your statements true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind? And here is a quotation for the person being scolded to reflect upon. I have never in my life learned anything from any man who agreed with me. Before concluding, I would like to discuss right speech and expressing humor. We often find it easy to get laughs with exaggeration, sarcasm, group stereotypes, and pure silliness, all classic examples of wrong speech. If people get used to these sorts of careless humor, they stop listening carefully to what we say. In this way, we cheapen our own discourse. Expressing our humor in ways that are truthful, useful, and wise may require thought and effort, but when we master this sort of wit, we find that the effort is well spent. We've sharpened our own minds and improved our verbal environment. In this way, even our jokes become part of our practice, an opportunity to develop positive qualities of mind and to offer something of intelligent value to the people around us. So in conclusion, proper speech is very important to harmony. Words can create anger or friendship, can win or harden hearts, can deceive others or open them up to a new understanding. The transformation of people and societies has been facilitated by speech, sometimes spoken and sometimes written. With the rise of mass media and social media, proper speech becomes even more important. Let me leave you with one last thought. If speaking kindly to plants helps them to grow, imagine what speaking kindly to humans can do. Now is the time for questions and answers.